What's going on, everybody? This is another episode of the Sports Binge with your host, Will Cotchery. Hope all is well wherever you are, and I hope you guys been doing all right this summer so far, enjoying this NFL offseason. Well, you got to use enjoy to, like, with a grain of salt because it's not real football going on. But I hope you guys are making do without regular season ball as of today. So right now, I just want to introduce a new series that I'm doing throughout the course of the next several weeks. It's going to be me ranking the greatest teams in each of the NFL divisions all time. Now, when I say all time, I'm specifically only including or considering the teams from 2002 onward to the present day, and that's so important because in 2002, that's when the NFL realigned the divisions to include the Houston Texans. So instead of like the old formats from the past, we now have 8 divisions with 4 teams in each because of their inclusion during their expansion 2002 season for the Texans. So I just wanted to throw that caveat out there as well. We're only considering teams, all the teams for each division from 2002 all the way up to the current day. Now, just another disclaimer: this is not I didn't use any specific or analytical algorithm to make these lists up. So it's just a top 10 teams from each division history. It's not no specific analytical data that I'm using. I'm just going off mainly just team record for that win-loss record for the regular season, and just going through like the division records and this other disclaimers from there. Because a lot of it is really just close knit. Is close knit and just splitting hairs because there's so many similar win-loss records for all the teams. So if you just stand out in any specific particular way, if you represented the NFC or the AFC in the conference championship, especially going to the Super Bowl, let alone winning it, those tend to get a lot of weight as well. So just like I said, it's just a lot of these teams are what and what. So just wanted to throw that out there as well. So don't get too emotional. It's just really just something pass the time. Just really the interesting topic that I came up with. So without further ado, here are the top 10 teams for each division's history series. Closing out the series with the AFC West, at number 10 we have the 2016 Oakland Raiders. They finished the regular season 12-4, including a 500 3-3 record within the AFC West, and they lost the wild card round to the Houston Texans. Now, this was a pretty special team because this was the first Oakland team that made the playoffs in 14 years, dating back to their Super Bowl runner-up team in 2002. And the 416 points that they scored throughout that campaign was the most since that 2002 Super Bowl runner-up campaign. And the team was really carried by their offense. They placed 7th in scoring offense and 6th in total offense. So they were really productive. This was really led by Derek Carr. As quarterback, Latavius Murray, in the running game, Amari Cooper. As a receiver, they were really carrying the team as far as their statistical success is concerned. Now, defensively, they weren't that special, ranking 20th in scoring defense and 26th in total defense, respectively, despite having Khalil Mack in the lineup, because he was the main guy really causing havoc consistently for that roster. And really, this team making the playoffs, this team was really a culmination of the franchise starting to get better with drafting for years. They did not do a great job of drafting. And even with the solid players like Darren McFadden that they did draft early, about a decade ago at this point, he was always injured. But because the franchise is a dumpster fire for almost a decade and a half. The critical issue of this team, however, was not really just they were a poorly run or they weren't talented on both sides. The injury to Derek Carr ruined their season. After clinching the playoffs, on the road game against arch rival San Diego Chargers, I think the week after or the week following that week, Derek Carr suffered a season-ending injury, so that really derailed any playoff hopes that they might have had, despite being 12-4 for the season. And of course, in the wild card, Connor Cook had to start. And it just didn't go particularly well, as one would expect, as they lost to Houston on the road in the wild card game. At number 9, we have the 2004 San Diego Chargers. They finished the season 12-4 with a 5-1 divisional record. They lost in the wild card round to the New York Jets. They were really solid on both sides of the ball, ranking 3rd and 10th offensively and scoring average and yardage average, and defensively they were 11th and 18th in those categories respectively. And this team marked the first time that the franchise made the playoffs since 1995. So it had been quite a while since they, even with Junior Seau as a leader on the team on the defensive side, it was a while before they made it to postseason play. This campaign also marked when Drew Brees, before he was the superstar he is today as a quarterback, and the legendary quarterback he is today, Drew Brees was comeback player of the year in this season, while LaDainian Tomlinson led the team in rushing for the 4th consecutive season. With their 446 points that they scored during that season, which is the 3rd most in the realignment era for the franchise, they were really getting it done as far as winning games, doing what they had to do to win games. Unfortunately, their historic efforts as far as making the playoff, that ending that playoff drought, their efforts were cut short in the playoffs by New York Jets. Number 8, we have the 2003 Kansas City Chiefs. They finished the year 13-3, including 5-1 against the AFC West, before losing in the second round to the Indianapolis Colts. They started the campaign 8-0 and really remained steady throughout the year, finishing 13-3, or 5-3 in their second half of the season. The 484 points they put forth is the second most in franchise history, second only to last year's team led by Patrick Mahomes at 565. So really, by that margin, you're like, oh, that's not that good, but obviously the errors are different. So that was really impressive to put up that production back then, like 15 years ago, despite it being like more of a defensively gifted era, or defensively centric era, which really helped to their offensive ranking 1st and 2nd in scoring average and yardage average respectively in that season. Defense wasn't that great. They were ranked 29th in total defense, but they were relatively middle of the pack in scoring defense. So they were a bend but don't break unit, ranking 19th in the league. Of course, at running back you had Priest Holmes, who was really becoming a superstar in the league in that stretch of time, in the midst of all iconic running backs. Before I filmed this video today, I was looking at a video from TPS, the YouTube channel TPS. They were basically saying why Priest Holmes is the most underrated running back of all time. I mean, like, they made a good case because he was in that stretch of time, that 3 to 4 year stretch in the early 2000s. He was unbelievable. And it's come to think about it, the Kansas City Chiefs were really blessed as a franchise. They have one of the richer running back histories on paper. The only thing is about them, they always peaked early. They always had like short peaks, and injuries really caught up to them later on, like Priest Holmes to Larry Johnson to Jamal Charles. They really had it going at that position for many, many years. Of course, you have Tony Gonzalez as the leading receiver. Despite being a tight end, I think he's the greatest tight end of all time. He's statistically accomplished, accolade accomplished. Can't really debate it at this point. I know Gronk is more. I think I consider Rob Gronkowski the most talented that ever played the position, but as far as the best, the quote-unquote GOAT, I have that to give that to Tony Gonzalez there. The only downside to this team, they played in an era in which the AFC was just so dominant, from Indianapolis to Pittsburgh to New England to San Diego. They were really in the midst of like a great era. Even Denver had some great teams here and there, during that time period in the early 2000s. I feel like if they were in today's AFC, I think they would be a little bit better. They have a greater chance of making it to the Super Bowl. Number 7, we have the 2009 San Diego Chargers. They finished the year 13-3, including 5-1 against the AFC West, and they lost to the divisional round to the New York Jets. Starting the campaign 2-3, they won 11 straight games to make it to the second round, to have the second round clinched, where they fell another disappointing outcome in the postseason to New York Jets again. And this is one of the usual cases for the Chargers. They would start off relatively slow. You would see this in the Phillip Rivers LT era. They would start off relatively slow, then they'll go on this unbelievable scorching tear in December, which was yet another case again as they won 11 in a row. They placed 4th and 10th in scoring offense and total offense respectively, while defensively they placed 11th and 16th in those categories. So another well-rounded Chargers team that we've seen in the 2000s decade. There was really no glaring weakness just on paper. They scored 454 points in the season and allowing only 320. So again, not as special as the 06 team, but they were still pretty good. At the 6th spot, we have the 2005 Denver Broncos. They finished the campaign at 13-3, including 5-1 in division play, but lost the conference championship game to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the eventual Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steelers. This team was most noted for knocking off the two-time defending world champion Patriots at home in that wild card game. The division game in the second round. They beat the Patriots 27-13 after a dominant performance by their defense. Jake Plummer wasn't really statistically great in that game, but the defense really carried the team to a victory. Nonetheless, win is a win at that point of the season. Unfortunately, they had a very disappointing outcome at home in the conference title game against the Super Bowl champion Steelers, 34-17. The team placed 7th and 5th in the offensive categories and 3rd and 15th in the defensive categories, which really makes it more, looking back on it in hindsight, makes it a little more disappointing that they didn't do well in the postseason offensively, especially since what they accomplished throughout the season on paper. Cracking the top 5 are the 2002 Oakland Raiders. They finished the year 11-5, including a 4-2 record within their division. They lost Super Bowl 37 to the historically great defense of the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The team was unbelievable offensively, ranking 2nd and 1st in scoring offense and total offense respectively, and the defense was really well as in their own right, ranking 6th and 11th in those categories respectively also. The team was led by MVP quarterback Rich Gannon, leading the team to 450 points of offense. And of course, they had Jerry Rice and Tim Brown, though at the late stages of their careers, they were still highly productive. And what made this team so special is that this would be the last Oakland Raiders team to make the playoffs for the next 14 years. So it was a long road ahead, a little that they knew at the time. But yeah, this team was really led by veterans that really played well in the last several years. But of course, the biggest story was the John Gruden Bowl, as he went from Oakland to Tampa to coach the Buccaneers to dominate that team 48-21 in San Diego. At number 4, we have the 2018 Kansas City Chiefs. They finished the year at 12-4, including 5-1 against the AFC West, and they lost to the New England Patriots at home in the conference championship game. This year was the coming out party of soon-to-be MVP Patrick Mahomes. Just unbelievable talent. That is God-given ability. To see the stuff that I saw, like just the sidearm passes, the mobility, of course, but the sidearm, that off angle, it was a thing to marvel at. It really was special to watch. We were watching, myself and my mom and my sister, we was watching I want to say it was the Sunday night game when they played against Seattle, and I saw him do a sidearm throw like it was nothing, because I got used to his greatness as a gifted athlete, and they were going crazy. But it just goes to show you, how spoiled we are as fans to see somebody of this, this talent of this magnitude. And of course, he became, threw for 5,000 yards, became the 3rd quarterback to ever throw for 50 touchdowns in the campaign. And of course, he beat out Drew Brees in the quote-unquote MVP race throughout the season, as the Saints sputtered a little bit offensively down the stretch. Patrick Mahomes further solidified his case. Offensively, of course, they were ranked number 1 across the board. Defensively, they weren't that special, despite being one of the top teams in the league in sack and total amount of sacks they had for the year. They finished 24th and 31st in scoring defense and total defense respectively. The 565 points they scored that year are far and away the most they've ever scored as a franchise, and that's going to be the story for them moving forward as long as Patrick Mahomes is under center. At number 3, we have the 2015 Denver Broncos. They finished the year at 12-4, including 4-2 against the AFC West, and they ended up holding the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the year by beating the Carolina Panthers, the 15-1 Carolina Panthers in Super Bowl 50. The offense at this point was really a shell of itself from the previous couple of seasons, and the biggest reason to that is Peyton Manning was at the end of his career. This was not what he once was physically. They finished 19th and 16th in scoring average and yardage average, but the defense thankfully was still elite, ranking 4th and 1st in those categories respectively. Became the no-fly zone, another defense that was really greatly viewed from their secondary, but they still had the great pass rushers from DeMarcus Ware and of course Von Miller as well, that really dominated the Super Bowl performance against Mike Remmers and Michael Orr in that game. And a special thing about this team, this was the last team where the Denver Broncos was actually formidable, because they haven't made the playoffs since. So I'm just thankfully they got the ring in the Peyton Manning era, one of the greatest free agent signings of all time, quite honestly. And it really paid off as they culminated with a championship victory to add to their franchise's resume. At the second slot, we had the 2013 Denver Broncos. They finished the campaign 13-3, 5-1 in the division, and unfortunately they lost Super Bowl 48 to the iconic 2013 Seattle Seahawks defense. Really, this team will be forever revered as arguably the greatest offense in league history. Coming off of his comeback player of the year campaign in 2012, Peyton Manning would win his 5th MVP award after leading the league in touchdowns with 55, which is the NFL record. Of course, he broke Drew Brees' 2011 mark for 5,477 yards, single season record. Unbelievable across the board. Demaryius Thomas, unbelievable. Eric Decker played amazing. Julius Thomas at tight end became one of the best in the league. So there was really no weakness on that offense because they were just carried by an iconic quarterback. And what even more impressive, the defense wasn't the same as it was in it wouldn't be the same as it became in 2015 because of Von Miller's injury, but they were still respectable enough on as far as they were ranked 19th in total yardage allowed, so they were a bend but don't break unit on that year. And unfortunately for them, they played an iconic defense that destroyed them from the kickoff. I just cut the game off at halftime. I was like, no, I can't watch this. I always jokingly say it. The best part about that Super Bowl was Bruno Mars. He had an unbelievable performance that day and that evening. But yeah, they're definitely, you could just say they're the best offense of all time. That's what they did from week to week. Obviously everybody, had their different opinions, but that would be their legacy. That, if anything else, that's definitely their legacy. Last but not least are the 2006 San Diego Chargers. They finished the campaign at 14-2 and 5-1 in the division, but unfortunately they lost the division round at home to the New England Patriots 24-21. Despite not making it to the Super Bowl, you could really put this 06 squad against any team on this list, and even really any team in the franchise's history. Despite not making it to the Super Bowl, they were just unbelievable on both sides of the ball, led by, of course, MVP winner LaDainian Tomlinson, who became the best running back in football. And quite honestly, he's the best running back in football just in this generation. If you're comparing him to Adrian Peterson, to me, those two guys are like the best in my generation. And everybody has their different opinions on who you would prefer. But he was really the bell cow of that team, especially when Phillip Rivers became the full-time starter in that season. Shawn Marion as an outside linebacker was arguably the best defensive player in football by winning Defensive Player of the Year. They, of course, had Antonio Gates in his prime, Lorenzo Neal blocking for LT. You had Antonio Cromartie as a corner, Quentin Jammer. You had so many veteran guys who dominated throughout the course of that year. Even you had Pro Bowler and All-Pro, first-team All-Pro Jamal Williams as a D tackle, and then you had Luis Castillo, who had 7 sacks, who was really a young player but still productive at that young stage of his career. The 492 points they scored in that season are the most in franchise history, as you would imagine. And that offense placed first and fourth in scoring offense and total offense, respectively. In defense, they were 7th and 10th in those positions, respectively. No glaring weakness on this roster. The only thing is, it would have probably been nice if Phillip Rivers was at the older stage of his career, but still did enough in that season to be respectable with a dominant running back like LT. I feel as though if they would have played the Patriots of that season 10 times, I feel like they would win 9 or 8 times out of 10, and they could have represented the AFC in the Super Bowl if things had gone differently. So that's my list. So I know everybody's gonna have their differing opinions, and I was like, why you didn't put this team on it? But just that's what the comment section's for. That's what the likes for. That's what the subscription is for. You can tell me all that you need to tell me on my YouTube channel. I'm just really eager to see what you guys have to hear. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to all my YouTube videos and my YouTube channel. You guys have a blessed day, and I'll see you in the next video.